Coming to you from Forager Brewery in Rochester, our town. And welcome to Our Town, the show about Rochester. I'm Eric Olson.
And I'm Jen Koski. Today we are talking with the candidates for City Council Ward 4 to help you become a more informed voter.
I'd like to welcome incumbent Councilmember Mark Bilderback and his challenger, Nicholas Moucha. Thanks to you both for coming in.
Thank you.
So welcome, gentlemen. Let's begin by hearing a little bit about yourselves. We'll start with you, Mark, as the incumbent here.
Sure. I was born and raised in Rochester, educated, worked, now retired, so I'm working that complete circle. Hopefully a long time before I hit the last one. But that's basically it. I did 35 years with the Mayo Clinic and have a degree in law enforcement, criminal justice, professional studies, and a master's in management.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and Nicholas.
Yes. So I moved here to Rochester, Minnesota about 5 years ago. Got into the banking industry for a while. Started out on some of my own ventures as an entrepreneur here in town and really got involved in the community as I moved downtown and got involved in a lot of different aspects of the community and really wanted to make a difference. And so I decided that I'd run.
Very good, thanks.
All right,
Very
thank you
interesting.
so much.
We'll be hearing more from both candidates on issues important to Rochester, like DMC and DMC and DMC, no, other things too. So stay with us.
Our Town is brought to you in part by the following amazing people and organizations.
Prow Company, a hands-on commercial property leasing company, leasing commercial properties in Rochester, Minnesota since 1952. Realtors and brokers welcome. Prow Company. The University of Minnesota Rochester, an undergraduate health sciences university offering education designed to change tomorrow's healthcare. University of Minnesota Rochester, always in the heart of our community. Clements Subaru, proudly partners with award-winning KSMQ Public Television. Clements Subaru of Rochester. Clements' clear value promise is to make buying a car fast, fair, and simple. The Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, and the citizens of Minnesota.
And the members of KSMQ Public Television. Thank you.
Welcome back. We are talking with the candidates for Rochester City Council Ward 4, Councilmember Mark Bilderback and challenger Nicholas Moucha.
So let's jump in with the biggest topic in town, which is, of course, DMC. What is your take, blessing or curse?
I think it depends on how you look at it. It could be both, and it is both. You're looking at an influx of money to a district, a zone, and that's going to be great for that zone. But what happens outside that zone, as well as what happens with our infrastructure, police, fire, public works. And so those things are all part of trying to figure out the pieces. And it's like a big 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle where we're putting together. The DMC actually got through the legislature much quicker, I think, than most of us thought it would. One term time through, it passed, and so now we're working out some of the bumps. And it had such a big push from the general public and from the news media at the beginning that everybody was very, very excited. And now they're that excitement's kind of waned a little bit, and everybody's going, what's happening, what's happening? Well, it's taken time to work out some of these pieces that are supposed to come together, and we're getting there. I think next year people will see an awful lot of building, and that's what they're all looking for to decide if DMC is successful or not, is the growth of the city. And I think next year you'll see quite a bit of that happening. If you've been following along in the paper and the different news medias, there's a lot of talk about what could be planned or what might be planned, and some of this stuff is getting out really, really early now. So we have a lot of projects that are starting down the pipeline.
And before we turn it over to Nicholas, I'm just curious of what you think some of those bumps are.
Yeah, well, and some of the bumps are, again, it's, you know, I think we're going to have the tax base once these buildings get up and operational. That's all wonderful. But again, I'm trying to serve the rest of the community, the public service, trying to make sure that we have the infrastructure to handle what's going on in that zone, as well as, and that's, again, like I said, the police department, fire department, what do we do to maintain that? Because what you're really looking at is an influx of people and taking on a lot more jobs, and do we have the adequate equipment to take care of this area? For the fire department, it might be, do we have the appropriate trucks? If these buildings start to be going 20, 30 stories, do we have the appropriate equipment to handle it? Do we have the appropriate training for our people? So we need to get ahead of that, but I think the excitement will be here once they start seeing the cranes in the air.
Okay. All right, and then to Nicholas, DMC.
Definitely. So DMC is a wonderful, wonderful thing. I see it. You had asked, is it a curse or a blessing? What it is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for this town, and not just for this town, with initiatives like Journey to Growth and such, to really go outside of our city, outside of heart of the city, outside of downtown, and really benefit all of the members of the community, and really build that infrastructure. So when it comes down to it, it's curse. I'm going to go with, what are some of our challenges? It's, making sure our infrastructure is going to keep up, making sure that our schools are going to keep up, making sure that everything else is going to be there when we hit those milestones, and making sure that we're not missing on anything as we go down this path of opportunity to really showcase our city and our area.
And the fourth ward, I mean, it's huge geographically in all of downtown. Just a new proposal just the other day about demolishing the Days Inn and Panacook in there, and now it's happened before that those proposals have come up, but that's your district there, that's your ward. What do you think about that proposal?
Yeah, that proposal specifically, I'm not educated enough to say anything specifically, but development and new ideas and such is really what DMC is built on, new ideas and opportunity. I think that there needs to be a center point for community members to be able to voice their opinion on historical buildings and so on and so forth, but there also needs to be opportunities for developers and for builders to find an opportunity and to be able to build and not have their rights infringed on.
Has there been enough public input for your satisfaction?
Right now, I sit on the Downtown Neighborhood Association as president there, and I see that that's a wonderful opportunity for your community, for your neighborhood, to have a voice about these developments, about what's going on in your neighborhood, from safety to developments. And each neighborhood has their own association. I feel that that's a really great and appropriate route to go.
Yeah, you're right in the center of DMC in your ward, Ward 4 Councilman. What do you think about like that proposal, that they come up, you learn about them, whatever, maybe it'll work, maybe it doesn't. How do you know whether to support it or not?
Well, and at the initial beginning of it, it's not our job to say yes or no to it. What our job is really to make sure that everybody that's supposed to be in that circle and that notification is done. For example, in this case, one of the things that I do is the developer has come and said, okay, Mark, what do we need to do? Well, these are the groups you need to contact. These are our neighbors. This group does have a downtown neighborhood association. We have 42 neighborhood associations throughout the city. Now they're all going out to be asked to fill out to make sure they're still active so they can be a recognized neighborhood association. We just passed, not too far back, part of a change in the planning ordinance where these developers have to meet with an established neighborhood organization if it's in that area. And it has to be early on. That's the most important part, is to make sure they connect early, because that way they're able to exchange discussions and ideas and thoughts. And what's important to the neighborhood is then conveyed to the developer and back and forth. And so hopefully they develop a trusting, good, open line of communication. And that way when we get to the planning zoning board and we get to the council, we don't have these 2, 3 in the morning kind of dragouts. And so that's important to make sure the people are connected at the right part. Your question about the ward, it is huge, and it covers many, many demographics, many different economic levels, and how to make sure that we're still taking care of them and not forgetting about them because the DMC is happening is important. There's still groups of people out there who feel their roads need to be fixed or that they need to have different signage for children at play. And those are things that are still active that you have to still take care of. So our elected position allows us more time with the community because there's so many more of these happening, and for the fact that the 4th Ward is in the heart of the city. A lot of the projects that are happening now and that have happened in the past, there are more that seem to be in the downtown area, the 4th Ward.
And I think especially with your ward, we have issues more so with historic preservation, which this Days Inn property is, which the Armory building is in your ward, right?
That's correct.
And the Chateau building. And
Yes.
so what role does the city government need to play in determining what needs to be preserved and what can possibly be sold and raised?
Right, and we do have the Heritage Preservation Commission, and they've been working through a new ordinance that we should be following, or hopefully follow soon. We need to get that back to the council. It's gone through all the different steps, the different groups that need to review it before it can be voted on. And we're at that point. We need to bring it forward. And hopefully that'll help figure out what should or should not be, because then the buildings that are considered historic will already have that background done on them. Because if it's 50 years old, I'm historic. And I really don't want to be. But that's the kind of stuff that's out there. It lays out what a building has to go through, and then what it needs to do to maintain its historic preservation. People feel that if a building's historic, has a historic registry on it, it can't be knocked down, and that's not true. But what we want to do, and you're correct, we don't have a whole lot of those buildings left. We need to make sure we preserve and protect the ones that are.
And I wonder, Nicholas Moucha, what do you think about save versus not save as far as historical preservation? Are we striking the right balance?
Sure, and to strike the right balance, you need to take into consideration different opinions. I think the biggest thing is that we need to really focus on figuring out what's a clear-cut line. You know, this is what we're going to do, and procedure. So we don't have a lot of issues when it comes to individual buildings. So as we go through and initiate or adopt any procedures, we need to stick to those in the future.
And we aren't doing that now, or what?
Once we have this coming up, I think we can really have a good, clear line.
So what is your take then, like on the Armory building that the senior center just moved out of as they're heading into 125 Live?
You know, I like the senior center building where it is, the Armory, excuse me. I really do think that the arts, it's a great place for the arts. I think that maybe a museum would be a good possibility. I'd like to keep it as a public building. I'd like to see it as a public building and being used for something in the public realm. I see that a lot of tourists come down here, and a museum would be a great opportunity down there. And I know that kind of was pushed out, but we can look at other opportunities.
And projects come and go, and big ones collapse. You know, the big housing that was going to be by St. Mary. That's your district, isn't it? The $63 million.
No, that's not.
No.
That's not yours. Okay.
Nope.
Well, we finally found some place that's not part of your ward.
When you get the second word, folks, in here, you can ask them about that. That's theirs.
But there is the highs and the lows of, and they come from out of nowhere, and then we want to do this or we want to do that. So how do you keep that process so the public can have input, and yet it's a business with businesses coming in and out? I mean, is it possible to coexist?
I think it's possible. It really is. Coming down to procedures, you know, we have to make sure that we have those clear-cut rules on what we can and can't do, and those are going to be formed by opinions from community members in the downtown neighborhoods or neighborhood associations. Comes down to opinions of city council, as well as opinions from the builders themselves and developers and the associations there. So coming up with those clear-cut lines and understanding the procedures.
So as city council members, how would you get that feedback from your constituents?
You get it because they call you. They have no problem with calling you, and that's good. I mean, on the business card that I have for the city, I put my cell phone number, and I've been ridiculed by people for doing that. But I think it's important that we're accessible, and it's also the fact is, we put rules, and we're working on putting rules in place, but they're not. Unfortunately, they never get to be. There's always an exception to, and you have to look at that. But it's important for us to understand that we need to reach out, we need to develop relationships well before we have to. The fact that if we know who the neighborhood leaders are, we know the different developers, we can bring these people together when we see something coming down the road. that means that there will probably be more projects that don't make it, that kind of go for a good while or they start down the road, but because it's very early in the process, we'll lose some of those. That happens. But it isn't, what's important is that we make sure that the community and the developers are together as quick as we can do that, so there's a good line of communication. If it falls, it falls, and then it probably wasn't the project we wanted after all.
So I promised that we would talk about things other than DMC, so I want to get this one in so I'm clear. Well, property taxes, I guess it's kind of
Yeah,
it's
beautiful.
kind of a different topic, but a maximum 10.8% levy was approved at a recent council meeting. Too high, too low? Nick, you go first.
I think right now it's high. I mean, we can all agree that it's high. Often hear a lot of business owners, as a business owner myself, looking for space to maybe take an office or looking for a building to buy. I mean, those taxes are huge. It really impedes on decisions, possibly new businesses coming into town, possibly businesses locating from outside of town into town. And I think that that should be something that's addressed. So I do think, yes, it is high.
But that's what services cost, so you'd have to cut services if you didn't have it that high. What would you
True.
cut?
I wouldn't cut anything. I think that there's a lot of stuff that's behind that, and I think it is high, but there's a lot of stuff in the details, and I think maybe explanation of why it is high to the public and to business owners and so on and so forth is really where we can make a good headway.
I agree it's high, but this is, if you talk with the legislative folks, please ask them about this. They put this out there where by law the city has to come and make a decision on what the maximum we can charge for taxes are, property taxes for a year. That gets everybody all excited, and I understand, it does me too, but the likelihood that anybody's property tax is going to go up 10.8 is very little, because there's a lot of things that go into it. What's the new economics, or what new tax bases do we have in the city, which is about 2 to 3% of that. So a lot of that won't happen, but it scares people, and it's an unnecessary thing to do because the legislature requires us to do so. So please ask them about why they make us do a preliminary. What that says, though, is that we can't go above that. We can definitely reduce that, and we will. When we have our budget meetings in December, we'll definitely try to bring that down. But you're correct, services cost, and we were like at and you gotta understand, of a $252 million budget the city of Rochester has, the property taxes make up about 52 to 54 million of that. So it's about a quarter of what comes into the city as well. But it does need to be explained. It is worrisome when you start seeing this, and every year we struggle. A couple years back, I voted no on the budget, just because I didn't think that this was the route to go. But now, what's important is for the public to know when these hearings are and come in and voice your concern. Because what we need to know is have everybody participate. I believe we can reduce that. I know we're going to reduce that. We won't be at 10.8, but how low can we get that to be justified is the important thing.
Speaking of state legislators, how'd you like that when the Twin Cities representatives start filing petitions to try to tell the clinic how to run and with the food service workers? How'd you like that?
I didn't. The fact is that we should not be going and telling businesses how do they operate businesses. Because where does it stop? Okay, you're talking to Mayo, you're telling Mayo what they can do. Do we tell 3M what to do? Okay, now we go back to a mom and pop single family store. Do we tell them how to operate? And I think the fact is what we really want to do is we want to withdraw government from interfering with the businesses. We want to help the businesses, and the taxes is one thing.
And yet the state government is in on this project.
Yeah.
So I mean, they say we have a role to play. We have a voice. You're going to hear our voice. What do you think about that, Nicholas?
I think that there is an opinion that they can express, but I think that they can't tell us what to do. They can't walk in and mandate Mayo to do things or mandate a small business, just like you had mentioned. I mean, where does it stop? Do you go down to your uncle's tool shop and say, oh, you can't do this anymore? That's just because, and it's out of your hands, and you got to figure out where it's going to stop.
Okay, so when we're on this topic of the money that the city is spending, how about the Rochester Public Library? They have come forward with a $55 million proposal for expansion. Do you want to take that first here?
First off, I love the library. Living downtown as a resident with a small child, I love walking down there and I enjoy using it. I enjoy having the accessibility to the library. I think that it's a bit much, the amount. I want to see the details. I want to see what it's going to cost. Why is it going to cost that? Is a full renovation worth it? Is it needed? Do we need the expansion upwards? Could we look at other opportunities? I think that if the money is used correctly, I think that it's fine.
I think what you have to do is the library needs to go back and relook at what their strategic plan is. We've talked to them. I'm on the foundation board, and one of the things that I've said is everybody's confused now, and so now we're getting a lot of mixed messages, because one time we were told, no, they want to stay in their location that they're in. Then we were told, well, they want to sign a mutual agreement of understanding with the UMR. And then they said that the latest thing was they want to partner with the Children's Museum. Well, what is it they really want to do? Help us figure that out. So I think they need to go back, look at what their plan is, look at a strategic plan for what the library is going to be in the future. Once we get that and they're comfortable with it and that's where they want to stay, then let's start working on the funding mechanisms and how this can happen or not happen. I think all of us have enjoyed the library, but Rochester is 54 miles square. We cover as much land mass as St. Paul. So is one location downtown the right way to go, or should we be having satellite libraries? They need to figure that out themselves, and I think once they do, it'll make it easier to figure out for us what can we do to help and support them.
Should we have a bigger push in the 4th Ward for low-income housing projects and transit? You know, there's all these talks about all these wonderful things right downtown, but people got to work there, they got to get there to their homes, and they need a better way to live. They can't afford these high-rise places.
I don't believe it should just be the 4th Ward. It should be shared throughout the city. The city had a thought, and they expressed it many, many years ago, about spreading housing out through all, so that all participate. It's important that the people who live in housing, and I think they get the wrong impression. Affordable housing is not low-income housing. These people are working, they're trying to make $22 to $25 an hour, and they need some assistance if they have family members to live there.
But
The 4th Ward.
We're not hearing about big initiatives.
We are doing a lot, though, in the fact that you have a brand new project, Joe Weiss's project, down on North Broadway. The council at the last meeting approved an area over by the Wicked Moose, 140 some units there. There's another project ready to start on Marion Road. So there are a lot out there. What you've heard a lot about is, what about inclusive housing, to make that a part of an ordinance, which is saying that if an apartment house is built and it uses TIF dollars, city tax increment finance dollars, that 20% of that facility needs to go into affordable housing. Personally, I think we need to look away from affordable housing and look at workforce housing, which takes in a much broader group of people. Again, they're all working, they're just not all working at jobs that are going to sustain for them to buy houses or to buy into bigger apartments. So it is happening.
Is there a low housing crunch or not?
I think there is. I think that also on top of low housing or low affordable housing, it's also accessible housing, you know, being able for everybody. Just like you were saying, you know, it's not somebody who's making a little bit of money. It's people that are making that $20, $25 an hour. It's hard to live downtown. You know, I live downtown right now in a studio, and if I want to upgrade to a bedroom, I'm going to have to double it or even triple my rent. And that's a lot, and to be comfortable in that arena. And so if we expect all of our citizens to, you know, double or triple from a studio to a 1 or 2 bedroom, that's hard. There's some wonderful opportunities out there that are going up. I think that we need to have more of those, and I think that we need to incentivize builders to build with lower rent. We need to build with better density, so it's better to make money for them in density-wise, so we can build more and have stuff that is affordable.
And to get them from point A to point B, I mean, that's a transit.
Right, that's what I was going to say. Transportation coming into downtown too, it is hard for some people to get there. And once they get there, parking can be horrible.
I had mentioned accessible housing, and accessible housing, what I mean is having that availability to have bus stops nearby. You know, you hear stories about people who have to walk this far. Well, if they can't walk that far to get to that bus stop or to get to that transportation, whatever it might be, that's an issue.
And also the hours. Right now it's pretty simple during 7 in the morning to 6 at night. But if you're a second shift or third shifter,
Yeah.
you're going to have difficulty getting there, because even if there's buses, people say, well, I saw the bus run at 11 o'clock. That's true, but they run in such a reduced area, it makes it much difficult. Transit's hard because in a lot of cases you're looking for federal government to help you. And if you're looking for federal government, you're looking 5-10 years down the road. That doesn't mean that we can't do things now, test out different programs like circulators to see if we can find better methods to move people around. And we should practice that now before we get down the road.
Well, and you know, whoever comes victorious in this race, it's good to know you won't have anything to work on. You know, it's not busy at all. We're out of time.
You could just skip right into that job, right? So thanks for joining us today on Our Town. It has been a great conversation, and we look forward to covering another race next week.
Candidates for the at-large city council seat will be joining us. Incumbent council president Randy Staver and challenger Sean Allen are on deck.
We will see you then on Our Town, the show about Rochester.
You can access more information about KSMQ on Facebook and at ksmq.org.